Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today I am joined by New York Times bestselling author, writer, and podcaster Carvell Wallace. Carvell is the author of Another Word for Love, which is a gripping and insightful memoir about growing up Black and queer in America. It is full of incredible poetic storytelling about humanity, love, and struggle. I have been a fan of Carvell's work since he co-wrote the memoir The Sixth Man along with basketball star and Warriors legend Andre Iguodala. Today, Carvell and I talk about how his background as an actor has influenced his ability to tell stories, about how he framed a trauma memoir to make it not feel so much like a trauma memoir. And we share a bunch of our opinions about hip hop and women's basketball. Remember, our May Book Club selection is No Name in the Street by James Baldwin. We will discuss this book on Wednesday, May 29th with Yadon Israel. Everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. And if you love The Stacks and you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/The Stacks and join The Stacks Pack. For just $5 a month, you'll get to join the best bookish community in the entire universe. We have a Discord channel, we have a monthly virtual book club, we get bonus episodes, and you get to know that by joining The Stacks Pack, you're making it possible for me to make this show every single week. And another perk of the Stacks Pack is that you get a shout out on this very podcast. So thank you to our newest members, Emily Wilson, Julie Turner, Angelica Quixie, Jessica Belanti, Mimi, and Ladina Shorter. Thank you all so much. And for those of you who don't know, I did launch a Substack. It's called Unstacked. You can get all of my hot takes, pop culture opinions, what I'm reading, and whatever else I'm into by going to tracythomas.substack.com and hitting subscribe. All right, now it's time for my conversation with Carvell Wallace. All right, everybody, I am very excited. I'm going to give you a quick rundown about this book and how it came into my world. So a few years ago, many of you know, I read Andre Iguodala's book, and I fucking loved it. I didn't want to read it. I was like, I don't know. I love Iggy, but like, do I care? And it was one of the greatest books I'd ever read, one of the best sports memoirs ever. And then at the end of last year, my lovely sister-in-law, Sarah, was like, do you know Carvell Wallace? And I was like, I don't think so. And she was like, they wrote Iggy's book. And I was like, bitch, what? Let's get him on the show. I immediately reached out to your team. I was like, I need this book. I will read whatever that person writes again.
Oh my God.
They sent the book. And I have to tell you, Carvell, it is so much better than what I had imagined. This book is fantastic. I love memoir, and it is a special memoir. It is in conversation with so many of my favorite memoirs, and I am just thrilled that you are here. So welcome to The Stacks.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm already getting teary. So.
Oh my gosh, please cry away. I made someone cry on last week's episode, so let's see if we can do it two in a row. For people who are not familiar with the book, who haven't read it yet, can you tell us in about 30 seconds, and I know that's hard because there's a lot in this book, about 30 seconds or so what the book is broadly about?
Another Word for Love is a book about trauma and recovery from trauma. And the idea is that early in the book, I kind of like go over the traumas that the main character, who just so happens to be me, experienced. And then the rest of the book is about all the different ways in which that person seeks to recover from that trauma. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that the site of that recovery is quite often in spaces of love, whether that's in intimate relationship, love with self, love with nature, love in sexual contexts, love in like contexts of making amends for prior harms. That's what it's about. And so it becomes a meditation on all of the elements and sort of pieces of life that comprise and fall under the definition of love.
Mm. Okay, I love hearing you say that, because this was one of those books that I read that I was thinking like where I started felt very different from where we end, right? Like the book starts and it feels like a pretty traditional memoir, right? It's like you're just telling us these stories or sort of in essays. And then sort of in the middle, something shifted, but I wasn't sure what. I was sort of like, okay.
Yeah.
And also, just to be really transparent, I actually put the book down because I had to read something in 2 days on deadline. So, I finished part 1 and then read parts 2 and 3 a few days later. So it really felt like when I came back to it, I was like, this feels really different than what I remember.
Did they change the book?
I'm like, what's happening?
Did they send me a different book when I wasn't looking?
Yeah, I was like, what did I do here? And then by the end of the book, by the middle end of part 3, I was like, oh, this is a totally different book. And so I'm wondering for you, can you explain how you were thinking about the 3 sections and like what you were trying to do with them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I was really motivated to sort of break the bonds of the traditional trauma memoir. But the problem that I had with that is that I had to write about trauma. And so I was aware that this was going to be a challenge of some type. And so I was like, well, what breaks a story out of? How can we talk about our trauma without making it about our trauma, without pimping our trauma, without selling our trauma? And I think a lot of a conversation I had, I wrote for the New York Times Magazine for a while, and I interviewed various writers and celebrities, and I did an interview with Terrell Alvin McCraney, and we got to talking about I asked him, I was like, do you ever feel like you're basically selling Black trauma for rent money? Because I feel that way sometimes. And so how do you deal with that? And, he said a thing that was sort of like, well, yes, but we have to ask ourselves why we have the trauma to begin with. Oh. And I was, exactly. He kind of gagged me there at the little table. And I was like,
okay. It's just a question. You don't have to choke me out.
I know you really, bro. And so I really sat with that. That was a really informative exchange for me. And I thought a lot about that. And so for me, the question of how to transcend trauma as an end in and of itself was also a political question, because it was I believe that, and I've written this before, that Black trauma is like marketing content in a lot of ways,
right?
That really supports our current system of power, because it's well, if Black people are always traumatized and always suffering and always telling stories about how terrible things are for us, then that maintains a certain power, a status power, we're downtrodden, and then the good people help us and the bad people are the reason we're downtrodden. And I just was I don't want to have to do with any of that. And yet I do have to write about my trauma. So for me, the solution was, let's focus on the recovery. Let's make this about the recovery from trauma. And so part 1 is kind of a laundry list of the terrible things that happened to me.
Yeah.
And then part 2 actually ends up being, it's really meditations on God. I mean, it's called Stories About God, but it's just 3 little stories that are about spiritual encounters that maybe don't look and feel like spiritual encounters.
Okay.
And I was inspired. I mean, I've always felt that way about spirituality, but definitely Joy Williams wrote a book called Stories of God, or 100 Stories of God, or something like that. I can't remember. And that book was, it helped me understand that you can write about God without writing about God. You can write that God exists in the spaces between us and one another. God exists in the spaces between us and the moon, us and the ocean. And so we can write about these things. And so I just had this little, for me, from a character standpoint, that is a turning point for this character. That it's sort of in Hollywood writing, they call it the dark night of the soul. And so it's the moment when things all looks lost, and then the character gets a glimmer of hope in some way that sort of leads them into act 3, and now they're ready to confront whatever it is.
Right.
And so that's what happened in this. Those 3 little stories about God are the character sort of having a turning point where they encounter some hope. And then the rest of the book, which actually is the majority of the book, pacing wise, this would not work. This is not screenplay pacing, because it's act 1 is 20 pages, act 2 is 10 pages, and then act 3 is 190 pages. But
not quite.
I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's way long. It's way disordered. Yeah. But I mean, there's always a screenwriter in my head being that's not right. But I ignore that person when I'm writing. But so then the last part of the book, part 3, is about this person trying to recover and put into practice these lessons, and trying to return to their sense of wholeness and humanity, so they can be fully present in their lives, and therefore fully present in the lives of others.
I'm obsessed with hearing you talk about this book already, because it's interesting to hear some of the things you're saying. I'm yes, of course, I totally got that. And then some of the things you're saying, I'm wow, I missed that. I want to know about when you started working on this book and how much it's changed since you set out to write it. It sort of, to me, feels like it's one of those books that maybe has changed a lot. Like you had to find the right form. But I'm curious if that is an accurate read or not, or what happened for you process-wise.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I tend to be like a write first, ask questions later kind of approach to things. And so the way I think of it, and actually I learned this in ETW, this is something that I took away because I spent 4 years in ETW.
Well, we should say ETW is a studio at NYU, and Carvell and I discovered that we both went to NYU and studied theater there, and we had some overlap with teachers, and he did ETW for 4 years, and I did it for one semester.
One lonely semester.
Sad semester.
And I did it for 4 lonely years, but one of the things I learned, it's an experimental theater program where there's a lot of self-writing and self-scripting and creating of your own work. And so I think one of the things I got from that is it taught me about myself as an artist because I had some artistic freedom to create things from scratch. Like, here's a blank stage, here's a black box, go do something. And so what I learned is that I tend to create first and ask questions later, or I like to. And so the creative mode, and the reason that's important for me is because the creative mode is a mode in which I actually can't really afford to understand what I'm doing.
Okay.
I have to be present to receive and transmit. And then, I mean, that sounds obnoxious, but sort of what happens.
I get it.
And so I get stuff down, and then I have to take off that hat and put on this kind of critic hat, not like a reviewer, but like, what is this work of art about? Like as if I were analyzing someone else's work. Well, what are the themes and what are the sort of like organizations and what is it, and what is it missing and what does it need more of? And then once I have that, then I go back into revisions, and now I have an idea of what I'm weaving together. So I think with this book, I started writing the proposal in fall of 2018.
Oh, wow.
And I sort of undertook it as a kind of spiritual thing. Like I was like, my friend has this her mom has this land up in Bodega Bay. And so I was like, she was like, well, come up here and you can write. And so I went up there, and it was like, there were animals and birds, and it was just like really beautiful. And the moon was out, and we were pulling tarot cards, which I had never done before. And something just clicked where I was like, oh, in order for me to do this, I have to let the veil be thin between this world and the next. I need to like experience the nighttime, like the abjectness of it, the sense of wonder and perhaps fear, so that I can like pull from deeper places. So I began writing just out of that space. And originally the idea for the book was that I was going to do like magazine style profiles of people in my life.
Oh.
And that's actually the book that I sold.
Oh.
And then pandemic happened.
Okay.
And it was not possible for a few months for me to like fly. And that was right around the time it was like time to get going. And it was not possible for me to fly around interviewing people and doing these like long things, for a while, especially because there were elders involved and, people who were immunocompromised. And so I was like, in the meantime, I started to think about this other idea, which I actually had a long time ago, which is, what if you just could document someone's recovery from trauma by first listing all the traumas, and then every single chapter after that first chapter would be a day in which there was a turning point in their recovery. And so you just did each chapter as like the day that this happened, the day that this happened. And they could be 5 years apart. They could be two days apart. They could be 20 years apart. So that's what it ended up being, which I wasn't quite sure that that's what it was until the end. I was like, oh, wait, I did that first thing from back in like 2016. And so that's kind of how the book evolved. But I will say that, that write first, ask questions later thing, that's also how I internally approach each essay. And so I will just start writing about what's on my mind, what's on my heart. And I believe that whatever is on my head is like has some kind of value. And so if I'm describing a bird, if I'm like writing about a pair of shoes, I'm just going to write it. And then at some point I'm going to be like, well, why the hell what is this even about? And then I'm going to start looking for, what are the metaphors and imageries and connective tissues, and what is the emotional truth that underlies this whole thing? And let's draw that out so that this makes some kind of sense.
Do you have a preference of which you enjoy more, the writing part or the asking questions, editing, reevaluating part? Or I guess the third part, which is then like actually shaping the thing?
I sort of like another part that is unnamed yet, which is when I'm just walking around with an idea and I think it's going to be the greatest idea that anyone's ever written.
That too.
and I'm doing my dishes and I'm like talking to people about it and I can't stop like researching it. I like that part.
That's my favorite
because it's
part
all
too.
the possibility.
Yeah,
with none of the disappointment.
No, and none of the limitations or
that's right.
or like
that's right.
formal constraints or whatever.
Yeah,
I love
because
that
because you're like, oh, this is going to be great, and then you start writing it and you're like, what am I even doing? This is trash. I'm going to be laughed out of the industry with this. Like, and that part's very uncomfortable. I do not like that part, but I know I've done enough writing now to know that you have to sit through that part if you want to get to the end.
Yeah, that's true. The other idea that you originally sold, the profiles of people in your life, you allude to that in one of the later essays about your aunt, right?
Yes,
is that what you're alluding to? Okay.
Yes, that's the one I'm alluding to.
I was going to ask you about. I was like, what's this other project? But now I know. Okay, thank you. You heard it here first, people. So wait, is that going to be a thing? Do you think ever?
I don't know if it'll ever be a thing. I don't know. You know, one reviewer's book person said quite plainly that they thought that was like kind of a cop out from the real book. That actually. They're
doing
glad
the
that
profile book?
They're glad that I left that behind because this book actually is like close to the bone. And that one was a little bit circular, like a little bit like avoiding the truth. And I somewhat related to that. I was like, I think this person might be right about that. So, but I still think it's a compelling idea, specifically because it's not just anyone in my life. It's particularly people who hurt me. That's what it's about.
Okay.
And so it's about how everyone who hurts me, like it's about the way we pass trauma from one to another. And so if we find other people's stories and tell them, then we can understand it's like like our sort of connection is the harm that they caused me, either intentionally or accidentally. But that just becomes the starting point. The investigation is who are they and why are they the way that they were.
Right. I like the idea. I do hear what that person's saying, like, because it's a way for you to sort of like be a little bit removed from the thing. But I think knowing what I know about the 2 books I've read of yours and the articles I've read of yours, I feel that you have a very sharp sense of what is important to get into a story to feel connected to the reader. So I trust that you wouldn't make a book that wasn't doing the things that you wanted to do. So that person maybe needs to have a little more faith in you, like me. But I do hear that. And I do think that sometimes certain people do run the risk of being like, oh, well, I'm going to talk about other people. And then that pulls themselves out of it. But I don't think you would do that. I think maybe it might start there, but then eventually I think you'd ask the questions, right?
Yeah, I'd have to get into it at some point. I'd be like, this isn't touching the page. That's the phrase that always comes to mind. It's like the words are above the page. They're not on the page yet.
I love that.
And so sometimes I think about how do I pull them down to the page so that they're right there. The ink is in the paper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's my question.
Yeah.
My question about vulnerability, because this book is extremely vulnerable, not just the trauma stuff, which is like, I think maybe sometimes can be easier to write because that's the expected thing. I think the healing stuff is what felt really vulnerable to me because that stuff felt fresh and new and like you were working through ideas and thinking about things and sort of opening yourself up. And I mean, there are some essays that are about, you know, like sexual intimacy, which is a thing that feels like vulnerable just by the nature of it. But there's one about apologies and amends that like really, I mean, like took my breath away. I read it like that. There's a paragraph that I go to underline, you know, and I was like, okay, let me underline this. And then it's just the whole paragraph's underlined. Like I'm like, okay, well, I could have just put a bracket. But anyways, so I'm wondering like how... And this is such a hard and stupid question because the question does not fully get at the thing I'm trying to get at because words are annoying sometimes. But like, how do you get vulnerable like that on the page? Like, how do you know when you've shared enough? Do you ever feel like you've gone too far and you have to pull back? Like, how are you negotiating doing the things that feel good to you as a writer, and then also remembering that there's people that you don't know who are going to have access to this part of you, and like, do you have to protect yourself, etc.?
Yeah. Well, okay. So starting with that last question first, this is my first memoir, and so and yet I'm old enough to know that I probably have mistakenly revealed too much. You know, and so I won't have a good answer to that question until after this whole process. Yeah. You know, I mean, I always feel like you don't know what a book, you don't really understand your book until after you've spent 6 weeks talking about it with everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, having it in the world and reading the reviews and having people ask questions. It's like you're not done with the book yet. You're still in it.
Yeah.
You're still writing it effectively. So I don't know. It may turn out that, someone said about this book that it's going to make people expect access to you in ways that are going to be both exciting and also really annoying. And that's a person who's written a lot of books. And so I trust that insight. And I feel fairly old enough and my boundaries are in place enough that I feel like I can probably navigate through that. So I don't know yet how to tell if I've revealed too much. But the earlier part of the question, which is like, how does one get vulnerable? There's two things that I always think about. One is that the vulnerability is necessary for the story. Mm-hmm. And so I have to be guided by what works for the story, not necessarily by what works for me. Mm-hmm. And people disagree with that. And I'm not like insane with it, but I'm like, I am a writer and my adherence is to the written, is just to like the craft of writing for me, which is about how you must be present in the story in order for the story to work, especially in memoir. So sometimes when I'm like, gee, I don't know, but then I'm like, but the story actually needs this. So it's like, okay, we'll do it because the story needs it because I'm here to serve the story. Like I'm not, So that's the one thing.
That's such an actor answer, by the way. It really is. Because I talk to writers all the time about memoir and they don't ever talk about serving the story. And that is like such an actor thing to say.
You're so right about that. And actually, yeah, I think a lot of the way I approach the work is definitely related to my really long history as an actor. Or early, and it wasn't long in years. It was like I started when I was like 14 and went till I was like 25 or 26. But they were really formative years for me, obviously. And I studied, like trained professionally pretty much that whole time. So, it's really embedded into the way that I approach anything. So the second thing is that the vulnerability actually is the point. In order to recover, I think the book suggests and has been my experience, one has to be willing to investigate and examine the self in a way that is somewhat fearless and thorough. And that can be hard, but it's also necessary in order to have the level of insight that is like needed in order to become a caring, loving person in the world and to dismantle the harmful things that are within you. Mm. So every time I pull back from a kind of intimacy on the page, I'm not just thinking about the story. I also sort of this voice in my head goes, but then are you really doing the work now? Mm-hmm. Or are you protecting yourself? Because, there's a saying, you can't save your, what is it? You can't save your face and your ass at the same time.
I've never heard that, but that sounds true. I believe it.
And so the attempts to save face maybe are not helpful to our attempts to actually recover and be better. Right. And so I'm willing to lose face in order to recover is kind of like what I've learned over the years. So yeah, the vulnerability is kind of the point. And one thing about this book that I think I've learned after talking to a lot of people is that the book isn't about the recovery. It actually is the recovery. Okay. Like it's evident. It's like it is the work of recovery. Mm-hmm. It's so I don't sit down and explain like in a TED talk. These are the top 5 ways we can recover from the. You know what I mean? It's like it is a real show don't tell kind of situation. Right.
Well, if you ever get asked to do a TED talk now, you know what you can do. You can just take some of these chapters and be like, "This is what I did." Hearing you talk about like book tour, I actually had written down for you. Are you prepared to talk about all of this stuff as the book goes out into the world? And I think. I will follow up with you once it's out because we're recording this before the book is published. When people hear it, the book will have just come out, but I will be checking in because there are authors that I know who have written. I would say that this book is certainly in conversation with Heavy by Kiese Layman, and he and I have talked extensively about what that experience was like for him and the ways that people feel entitled to parts of you. And his book is a lot. Have you read it?
Yeah.
And his book is a lot about his physical body. And so the ways that people felt entitled to his body is really interesting. And so I will be very curious to know about what your experience is. And hopefully it is different in positive ways and different in other ways, I guess, too. Okay. I want to talk about words and I want to read what you wrote and then we'll talk about it. So you say, speaking of obnoxious, I also heard that the jazz composer Charles Mingus would write notes for instruments that were outside of the instrument's range. So for a tenor sax, let's say what a concert pitch goes from, and I don't know how to read this, AB2 to E5.
Yeah,
no
A
fucking
flat,
clue.
A flat to
Whatever.
yeah.
A flat to E sharp.
Yeah,
Who knows? And he might write a melody with an F sharp in it.
Uh-huh.
And when the tenor plays in his orchestra, would read the charts and point out that there was no way they could play the note as written. Mingus would reply, I know that, but the sound of you trying is what I'm going for. This is what words are to me, the sound of us trying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I have been thinking a lot, especially as I talk more and more about the book, about the fact that words are both a really poor, limited container for the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why writing is hard and frustrating, because you're always like, yeah, I need the words, but they're what we have in the realm of writing. And they're not all we have in the world, but they're what we have in the realm of writing. And on the flip side, as much as that's frustrating, that's also, to me, a really inviting challenge, because I have found that if you can put words in a row and tell and communicate a thought, but you can also put words in a different order and communicate an emotion or a feeling, almost transmit, not even communicate. And this is what poetry does. Right. So like when we, whatever, like you ate the plums, it's like, that's not a story about eating the fucking plums. That's a story about love and loss and hope. And, and so what great poetry does is it arranges the words in a way that can invoke something way bigger than the words. And I find that a really magical process. And so that's what I try to do with this work here. Sometimes it's hard to sustain that for like 200 and odd pages of prose. Sometimes you just got to write like a sentence. You're just like, he opened the door. Yeah. But I try.
And it's just about a fucking door.
And it's just the door, guys. Leave it alone. But I do try to, I do like that, the process of trying to do something bigger than can be done by the form. And I think I liken that to a spiritual pursuit, because I think that our attempts to understand God or understand our worth and our meaning or understand the universe and to connect with and express the full body of love for that is also a pursuit that like pushes us larger than the container. But the attempt to get there is what is beautiful. And for me, and I think that even earlier in the thing, I was talking about people putting like oranges on like on the altar, or pouring a little like liquid out, or making some incense. And if there is a God that has like human emotions, which for literary purposes, let's just say there are, because that's kind of a cool story, then that God isn't pleased because like, oh man, I fucking love these oranges. Like, I'm so glad you brought me an orange. Like, I'm God, I have infinite oranges. It's the attempt to transcend that is something, to me, one of the most beautiful aspects of the human spirit. So I think that that's what that's about for me.
I love it. Okay, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the stacks. Okay, we are back. There are two things that we have to talk about. I will let you decide the order in which we talk about them. One is I want to talk about the title of this book because it comes up at least 4 times directly and 1 time with some variations, but I think I might have stopped underlining it. And then the other thing is Andre Iguodala. So you can decide how you want to do it, but those are the 2 most important things that we have to talk about. I have other things too, but I got to do both of them.
I'm really curious about Andre Iguodala. Let's start with that because I feel like not enough people have asked me about that.
Okay. Oh my God. Really? I was like, before I read the book, I was like, I cannot wait to talk about Andre Iguodala. And then I get to the part in the book where the book is mentioned and it is like a fragment of a sentence. It's like, and then I wrote a book for an NBA guy. And I was like, what? And then I was like, well, I guess I can't ask him about it because probably he doesn't want to talk about it because it's not in the book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a huge Warriors fan. I'm from Oakland. I love Iggy.
Yeah.
I actually ate at Katana down here in LA in 2013 at the same time as him. Him and his partner and his kid were at the table next to us. And me and my husband and my best friend were all like, oh my God. Because we had just gone to the game. It was a playoff game. And then they were all at dinner after. Anyways, I love the Warriors. I personally love Iggy. And I love that book. And that's what I really want to talk about, which is like, you and he work together. I want to know how you guys work together, how much of it is like you crafting the story, him just giving you information, whatever. But also like, I want to know how you feel about basketball and like, if that's something you're interested in and excited about, or was this just like sort of an assignment that you dove into and did a great job with?
Oh, that's a great question. That second one is a great question. So I'll start with the first one, which is that the way we did it is that it was like lots of interviews. Okay. And so the goal for me was to interview him in such a way as to get him to write the story without him having to actually touch the keyboard.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what it is. So I don't think I did like a tremendous amount with that. I think if anything, my contribution is like maybe the arrangements of some words and just like the way I ask questions and the way I follow up on them. But it's his story and he told it as his story. And I learned sort of it was the first time I ever did that. So I think the first run I took at it was kind of trash. And then we had to back up and but I was sort of learning on the job. And so was he, because I don't think he'd ever done that before. And so, I think after a while we sort of got a rhythm going where it's like, okay, if I ask you, what was it like draft night? And he says, because athletes aren't writers for the most part, although sometimes they are, but often they aren't. And so I'll say, what was it like draft night? He'll be like, it was really exciting. And then I'll be like, oh, I get it. I have to like now get him to talk about what the feelings were that night. And he's willing to do that, but he just needs that prompt and after he got it, I mean, Iggy's an incredibly smart person. So it didn't take him a long time to put 2 and 2 together. Oh, that this is how this particular sport works. And so then it was a lot easier as we went on. He would like delve into the emotions, the feelings, putting the reader in the moment, inside his POV in the moment. And so to me, that was like, it was not difficult to get that material out of him.
And then the second part, what's your relationship to basketball?
I do love basketball. It's, I literally just like last night was watching the playoff. I was watching the Lakers game. I came in at the end of the Philadelphia game, but I watched the entire Lakers Denver game. And I find basketball interesting and literary. Like it's fun to watch. And it's I have come over the years to understand the game well enough that I can actually understand the stories, through understanding the technical aspects of the game, some of which is because I spent so much time with Andre and just other, I did a Steph Curry piece for the New York Times for the New Yorker. And so I got to, and I've just like been able to pick up on the game and understand, oh, this is interesting, this defense. Oh, look, why was he positioned over here? Oh, why did they run a screen in this thing? They really should have, done it at the top of the key. Like you just start to see things unfold. So I love it. And the other thing I love about basketball, which I find is partially true in football too. I grew up as a football person because my years in Southwestern Pennsylvania, that's what it is. Like people are like, basketball, what? It's like football. But the thing I love about basketball is that you can see the emotional changes in teams throughout a game.
Yes.
You can just tell when a team is like defeated or when they go, we've got this. You can watch that change, and it's just incredible to see, a group of people like go through that together. I just find it endlessly beautiful.
I so agree. I feel like it's the most clear in NCAA tournament basketball. God. Those games, you're literally, doesn't matter, men's or women, it does not matter. I think it's the age, right? It's like being on this huge stage and feeling like all you have are the people on your team with you and feeling like the momentum shift or the energy shift. The way, I mean, in game 2 of the Lakers, Denver just a few nights ago. One you could see.
The one where Jamal Murray hit the game winner. Yeah.
Which they called the Hail Murray, which I love.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Even though I'm like, okay, it should have been a half court shot if you want to call it a Hail Murray, but whatever. I love the wordplay.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. It's 8 out of 10. But that game, you could see it. And I kept being like, because I'm a Warriors fan. So I've been on the losing end of a lot of those kind of games for the course of my basketball fandom. And if you've loved a losery team, which I have since the 90s, right? You could see it even more. Like loving a winner, it's harder because you're like, we always could come back. I don't care what my eyes are telling me, but loving a loser, you're like, it's over.
Well, it's such an interesting time, and this may get cut because now we're into sports talk, but
no, we're doing it.
It's such an interesting time in the Warriors story and in basketball in general, because what I was thinking when I saw, I mean, we see this in the Bay that like, I'm sorry, I don't want to say it's over. But it might be over. Mm-hmm. It might be over. And I remember in that Steph Curry piece, I wrote something about all the winners lose at some point. Mm-hmm. And time passes and people get old and knee injuries don't get returned from. Yeah. And the sun sets on all of this. And I think we're at a point in Warriors history where it feels like that. But also I think basketball wise in general, like LeBron James and Anthony Davis and the Lakers were just, they're outmatched. They're outplayed last night by Jokic and the Nuggets. And you're like, oh, we're watching the sunset on an era. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James. All of them. Always you were in your mind, you're like, well, obviously it's LeBron. He's going to come back. Obviously Kevin Durant is not going to, you know what I mean? But like, you're like, oh, the sun is setting and a new crop of people is coming up and it's like really exciting. Yeah. But, there's always something literary and beautiful about that moment of transition.
It's so funny because I think for me personally, like I am of the age I'm between LeBron and Steph in age, right? So like these are them getting old is unfortunately me getting old, right? Obviously, the work that I do doesn't rely on my physical body to be strong enough. Like, I don't think I'm out of my prime yet, but it's hard to like look at the younger players and like feel the same kind of feelings that I feel for my generation of basketball players, which I feel like, happens for every sports fan at some point. So I remember being little and going to Warriors games and being like, he's 15 years older than me. And then being like, we graduated the same year. And then being like, I'm older than Steph. And now I'm like, oh, when these guys go, like, Ja Morant could be my child. Like we're getting close.
Well, that's what it is. Like I'm just going to say the next iteration of that is like that child is like the same age as my child.
Yes, exactly.
And he just scored 50 points at Madison Square Garden.
And I'm like,
so what's going on?
So I'm old enough to be the grandparent of a good basketball. Like it's just like getting older and older. And I mean, I obviously will find a way in. I found a way in at 3. So I'm sure at 43 I'll be fine or whatever. But it's just funny to like, the literary nature of sports, I think, is what I love so much about sports. And we talk about sports on this podcast, and I'm sure people are rolling their eyes at this point because this wasn't a sports book, but I snuck it in, bitches.
You did it.
I did it. Check. But I wish more people watched and loved sports because I do find so much parallel to what I love about books, right? Like these storytelling and like the relationships between the players is how I feel like the relationships between authors and who blurbs who and now this person's like, I don't know. There's all of that drama is in it for me in sports. Yes. And it's funny because I grew up my whole life as a sports person. So everyone in my life, my personal life, my not work life are sports people. Yeah. And now I'm in the world of books where so many people aren't that I'm like, wait, You don't want, like, you don't want to just
even,
go
like,
down
consider
and,
this?
Yeah, you don't want to like go down and watch the game. Like, you guys want to watch the National Book Awards, but there's like a football game on.
Well, that's part of what's so exciting about what's happened in NCAA college women's basketball in the last year or so, because
people are into the
potential
story.
there is that people are able to find their way into the sport that just were unable to, because they're like, it's a bunch of dudes, you know what I mean? Like, I don't fuck with it. But like now, so I think that the real power, like the WNBA, I think we'll see like if that energy is able to carry over. But definitely the last few years in the NCAA with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and the Paige Beckers and all this stuff, to me it feels like that allows so many people to be like, wait, this is amazing.
Yeah.
These kids are out here trying to ball. Oh my God, that was a foul. What the hell?
Right,
oh my God, she came back. She hit a 3 at the end of the half to put them up. Like, this is amazing.
Right. I know.
I want people to be able to experience that without, I want more people to be able to experience that and to feel comfortable experiencing that. So I'm like really into the rise of the women's game.
Me too. It reminds me also of the rise of like women rappers right now. How like the women rappers are the ones who are the most fun. They're the ones doing the most innovative shit. They're like out here dancing. They're free. They're joyous. Their music is fun to dance to. Like, it's exciting. And we've been told that like hip hop and rap are for men. And then you look at the men's game and it's like the men's college basketball where you're like, who are these sad boys?
Who are these people?
And why is the only one I know using a hologram of Tupac? Like, what's happening? Like the whole like sad boy rap beef that's happening. I'm just like, you guys are all great. All three of you are lovely. Like, Kanye, go home. Like, it's just interesting because my whole life I only liked men's rappers, right? Like, it was like Lil Kim here or like Eve there, but it's like men.
Yeah.
And same with basketball. The NCAA men's tournament was all I ever cared about. And then now I'm like, wait, the women are amazing. Yeah, and the women are fun, and they're tapping into all the things that I actually like about basketball and all the things that I actually like about rap. And like, I've been told that they're less than, and like, it's all the internalized shit, but like, these games are more fun. These characters are more fun.
Yeah, that's right.
The art is more fun.
Yeah.
The energy is more, the coaches are like, the whole thing is better over here. But I've been told this lie that women are not as good because they can't dunk or whatever, Well,
part of that too, I think both in rap and in basketball, especially NCAA, is that because too many of us have strayed from the core tenets. And because of a whole host of factors, the NCAA women's game is at the core tenets of college basketball. They're in there for 3 or 4 years, which never happens in, and they're playing fundamental basketball with actual shapes on the court and passing and, and defense and so on and so forth, and court vision. And I think the same thing is kind of happening in hip hop, the idea that hip hop is specifically about just having the most devastating rapidy rap in which you insult the most people in the most devastating way. That's been sort of a thing, but that's not been the core tenet. The core tenet is to fucking move the crowd.
Yes.
That's what MC, I'm old enough to be like, I remember when MC, which, was massive ceremonies, but then was backronymed into to move the crowd.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So if you put this shit on and the crowd isn't moving, I don't care how much rapidy rap you have going on, you've strayed from one of the core tenets, which is you're free to do. But I think in both, in the women's game, rap game, the core tenets are very much, in effect, and we're seeing how people are responding to that.
Oh my God. Okay. This was not on my bingo card for today's conversation, but honestly, this is my favorite thing in the world. I feel like you mentioned that in the book. You're like, I love asking questions that neither of us could see coming.
Yes.
And that I do too. I underlined that also, but this was one of those. So everyone who came here to hear more about trauma and things, sorry, but we have to do fun stuff. I had questions about boyhood and sexuality and addiction, but you know what? That's in the book. You can't get rap and women's basketball in the book. It's not there. That's going to be in another book. But let's do the title. Another Word for Love. It comes up in my notes the first time on page 78, which I believe is at the end of part 1. This is the paragraph. It says, "This is why I don't want to write about the people who have hurt me. They are among the dying. I am among the dying. You are among the dying. To be among the dying and to know it, the feeling that gives you, that is another word for love." And so you kind of drop these things similar to that in different parts where you explain a thing and then you say this is another word for love. when did you know that that was going to be this refrain? When did you know that it was going to be the title? Was it always the title?
It was not always the title, and it didn't become the refrain until after it became the title.
Okay.
I was a little bit giggled about it because I kept thinking of this Family Guy joke where
surprise and delight.
where someone's like, it's a cutaway where someone's like, this is more exciting than when they say the name of the movie in the movie, and it just cuts to someone being like, whatever, and that's why this is Cold Justice.
Yeah,
and Peter's like, he said it.
That's how I feel whenever I see a title in a book. I'm like, oh, highlight.
Yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
the title.
So every time I did it, I kind of giggled because I thought this is a little bit goofy, but it felt justified. The title actually was gifted to me by a writer, a local writer named Nina Renata Aaron, who wrote a book called Good Morning, Destroyer of Men's Souls, which is a tremendous memoir of addiction and codependency. And we were just like talking about it. And she was like, well, how's your book going? And I was like, well, this and that. Blah, blah. And she just said, you should call it Another Word for Love. And I was like, huh. Like it just landed. And after she said that, I don't think I ever looked back. I think it was so obvious to me that that's what it should be called. And then as I was writing it, because I think at that point I had written maybe like 2/3 of the first draft, or maybe it was in revisions. I don't remember the exact point. But it started to become clear to me that if the book is positing that the practice of love is a recovery from both personal and political trauma, then it would be necessary to define the terms of love. And since like bell hooks and many others have so like usefully and completely defined terms in the dictionary sense, then I felt as like a writer, as like kind of a lyrical, kind of like creative nonfictionist storyteller, my job was then to tell stories that would be love. And so sometimes I just wanted to help the reader put that together by being like, and that was another word
and this
for
is
love.
Another Word for Love, in case you missed it.
Yeah.
I need it. I need that.
Yeah.
Because I also, there's so many like little lessons in the book. I feel like we probably don't have time to talk about all the boyhood stuff, but I think like a lot of that's really interesting of like being a Black boy, what the fear is like there's this early essay about fog, which I'm from Oakland. So, the fog is very important to me. Like, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know that fear. Like I remember being little and having the fear of like driving in the fog with my family.
Yeah.
But also like a lot of stuff about like kids taking responsibility for adults and like what kids take away from moments, right? Because in the story about the fog, your mom is like, no, you need to go through the fog. And as you're going, you're sort of like, it was always in front of you and always behind you, but you never were like in, like you never felt like the fog had taken you over, right?
Yeah.
And like that you learn. And I think the lesson at the end though is like, you learned that you were going to have to do some things alone.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, there's not a question there, but I do think like to the point of like you telling us the title, like there's so many lessons in the book that I just like resonated with, that it was helpful to have that flag of like, this is another word for love if you're taking notes. And I'd be like, okay, I am taking notes. Thank you. Okay. Like I actually really liked it because like I said at the beginning, there's so many parts of this book, depending on who you are as a reader, that will resonate, that will land, that will feel important and like a lesson for you or like something to meditate on deeper, that having you tell me what you're thinking about very directly felt like a real gift. And maybe this circles back to the audience or to the actor thing, but I'm obsessed with audience. I'm obsessed with authors and how they relate to their readers and theater makers who relate to their audience and basketball players who know when they hit the shot and then they turn to the 4K camera. I'm like, thank you. You understood the assignment. And so I don't know how you were thinking about audience in this book, but I would love to know how you were thinking about audience in this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you used the word meditation just now, and I think that actually is a lot of what this book does around love. Is it's a meditation on what and like on what different things comprise love, and what do we do with the meditation? We sit with something. We don't necessarily answer or resolve. We sit with, and so I think I was interested in like whenever I accidentally wrote something that I felt like, oh, you could probably sit with that, or someone could probably sit with that for a long time, myself included. Then I was like, I sort of flagged it with That's Another Word for Love. And one of my favorite ones of those is to feel everything and to become nothing taken together. These two are perhaps another word for love, or whatever. And so the idea of like, this gets to the audience thing, because what I'm thinking when I'm writing this is that I'm going to empty out the contents of my brain and all the things that I've meditated on. And I'm going to be like discovering some things as I write. Like I didn't know that going into that sentence. I wrote that sentence and then was like, oh, wait. Oh, right. This is, because I know what the title is and what the book is doing, I'm like attuned to these things. And so I think that the audience everyone is going to like be like, I don't fucking know about this part, but then read some other part and they're going to be like, my mind is blown.
Yes.
I will be sitting with this for the rest of my fucking life. And the reason I have a sense of that is because that is my experience going through the world anyway. Is that I'll just be spitting, like saying what is true, and people just be looking at me like I'm crazy. And then all of a sudden someone will be like, holy shit, that's the deepest thing. I never heard that. Yeah. And for me, I don't take that as any kind of thing, because I'm not coming up with any of this shit. I'm just synthesizing stuff that has been around me my whole life, and lessons that I've learned and things that teachers have said to me, and putting two and two together and sharing that. And so I think of myself as someone who's just, who's like an interpreter of information, spiritual and personal and perhaps emotional information. And I have a method of doing that right now, which is through telling stories. And so that's my offering. And so I think that the audience there will be people who are mad at this book and don't like it, for sure. And, it's not really for them.
Yeah. Sorry to those people who
it's for
are
people
not smart.
who are, it's for people who are interested in like sitting and meditating on like the questions of the human experience, love, justice, liberation, etc.
Yeah. We're going to hard shift to the most important questions of this episode, which are my favorite questions, which is 1, how do you like to write? Where are you? How many hours a day? How often? Music or not? Snacks or beverages? TV? Set the scene.
Oh, God. The problem I have is that I don't really like to write.
Oh, me neither. So that's great. What I mean? Talk about it.
Writing is the most uncomfortable part of being a writer. Everything else is kind of cool. So I tend to it depends on how close I am to deadline is the honest answer. When I'm far away from deadline, I'm not writing shit. I'm out here, I'm wandering through the woods, I'm going to the beach with my friends, I'm like cleaning out, I'm like vacuuming the corner of my closet, I'm trying out new recipes, I'm just bullshitting. And all that is like, I've come to either convince myself or believe that all that is gestation time, it's like thought processing time. When it is time to fucking write, because someone's going to be mad at me if I don't finish writing, which is pretty much the only thing that ever motivates me, is fear of others being disappointed in me. Then I have a desk here at home. I'm sitting right now in my closet office, my cloffice, and you can see the jackets behind me. But this is, it's a nice little setup. I've spent more money on my office chair than I've spent on any piece of furniture in my life.
Okay.
One day that came to me to do because I knew I was going to be sitting down. And actually, it's funny because it really did change the writing of the book for me when I made that decision to do that. And so I spent a lot of time in this thing. I used to early in my career write at night. I was a late night, all-nighter writer. I'm too old for that shit now. I write when the sun is up. When I'm done, it doesn't matter what I did during the day. If I'm done, I'm done. Like if it's 6 p.m., I'm out. Screw you. I'm making dinner and I'm watching basketball or reading or whatever. And so that is where I mostly do the writing, is here. I do write in cafes sometimes. And I have like friends that are like my co-working buddies.
Okay.
Not all of whom are even writers. One of them is a human rights attorney, and they'll just be working on a brief and I'll be working on a thing. And it's I just love the dialogue that we'll have when we take breaks, And so there's that. And then.
And what do you order at a cafe for writing?
Not a lot. I mean, I don't coffee, and sometimes I just like lie and don't order anything. I try to sneak in the back, because I'm already too caffeinated and I can't focus if I'm too caffeinated. So I just have my little water bottle. And then the other thing I do sometimes is I will go away to write. Like I mentioned that my friend's mom has a house up in Bodega Bay, And I wrote the proposal there and a good chunk of this book there. And I can only do that for like 2 or 3 days, but those 2 or 3 days tend to be, I am very lonely, and I get lonely enough that I have no choice but to write. That is what is necessary sometimes for me, because if I'm not lonely enough, I'll just be texting people and scrolling Instagram and laughing at memes, and you know what I mean? And so I have to sort of get lonely enough and bored enough that there's no choice other than to write.
Okay. You talk about that a little bit in the book, that you used to write in solitude and now you write in community. What's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Privilege.
Ooh, so hard.
Beating my ass.
I think there should be a D. I've added a D to privilege.
Yeah, privilege. Like autocorrect is like, bro, we've talked about this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, autocorrect.
No, autocorrect, I have no respect for that. I don't know. And it's going to be wrong every time. Sorry to you. This is your job. Please do it. No judgment.
Yeah. And weirdly, Columbus lately, because I'm doing a book stop in Columbus, and I realized, bro, you don't know how to spell Columbus, do you?
Because does it have a U or an O?
It's got a. See, well, you don't even have me out here. Like I believe it has a U, but I think it has an O.
I think
like I always write it with an O, and then it's always like, bro, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
you're doing an event with Hanif, right?
I am doing an event with Hanif.
So great. Okay. Last few questions. I don't know if you have an answer yet because the book hasn't come out into the world, but who's been the coolest person to express interest in this book?
No Name just DM'd me yesterday. That's a no-brainer.
Holy
that's a no-brainer.
Shit. That's
No
awesome.
Name DM'd me yesterday to say, hey, I read your book. I loved it. We're considering it for the book club. I don't know if it'll happen, but that in and of itself, I was like, I'm done. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Good night. That's all I needed.
That's amazing.
All I needed. Yeah.
Okay. For people who love Another Word for Love, what are some other books you might recommend that are in conversation with it?
Ooh.
I already said heavy.
Yeah, heavy for sure. Actually, one book that I don't hear enough people talking about that was a huge influence for me is Braiding Sweetgrass. And
that's a huge Stacks Pack favorite. Everyone in the Stacks Pack loves that book.
It's so funny.
I've still never read it, actually.
Yeah, Robin Wall Kimmerer. Yeah, I think if you read it, I almost don't even want to tell people to read it, because then they'll be like, this guy just stole everything from the house. He didn't come up with none of this shit. But no, I would say that's probably the main one that I go to when people ask me that question. And it's funny because because I live in Oakland, so everyone and their mother is always talking about that book for when it was out. Everyone was just all over it. And then I remember being in the East Coast and talking about it to various New York literary people, and they were like, the what now? Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is the East Coast. You guys don't know.
They don't know. They don't be knowing.
They don't be knowing. I would say, I don't know how many you want me to do.
Oh, you can do more.
Yeah, like Joy Williams' 100 Stories of God, I think is what it's called.
I'll link to it in the show notes.
59 Stories of God, or I can never remember the exact one. That one, that's a weird experimental book, and I really like it. Another one that I hadn't read before I wrote this book, but I'm reading after, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of overlap here, is The Disordered Cosmos by Chandra Prescott Weinstein. Oh. Yeah, that one. And so
interesting. That's so interesting.
And like the book is, I think the overlap is that it is a spiritual overlap, like not necessarily a material one. Like the book is obviously a lot about particle physics, and there's a lot of details, and you learn stuff. And it's great because I feel like I'm keeping track, which I used to never be able to do with stuff like that, but I was always interested. But also Chanda's work on queerness and the stuff about time and the stuff about the sort of cosmic nature of African indigeneity and the diaspora is stuff that I feel like is really woven throughout this book for me. And it was really, as that feeling of like reading this and being like, oh, there's other people who are thinking about this stuff the same way I am.
I love.
And Chanda's another one when you ask like who's been interested in the book that has been so cool, like Chanda has like reposted my stuff, and I've just been like, oh my God, I can't believe they even know who I am.
I was just with her this past weekend. I wish that I had known that she'd read it. I would have talked to her about it.
I don't know if she even read it. I mean, because I don't know that I sent her one or that we sent one out yet. I just know that she just like posted, like when I posted the cover, she just reposted it on her Instagram.
Maybe she likes the Iggy book, like
and I was like, yo, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I've never heard her talk about basketball, but you know what? Chanda contains multitudes
Quite literally. She's a journey into dark matter, space-time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She did the show. We love Chanda around here.
Oh, she's great.
And you know who else? I mean, we'd mentioned him, but Hanif. I think the writing styles, like it's in conversation. And I know that he loved this book because when I told him I was starting it, he was like, "Oh, I loved that one." And I was like, "Okay, well, now I have to read it."
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Okay. Last question: if you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
Wow. I was not prepared for that.
Sorry.
My mom. I mean, that's kind of a boring answer.
No, it's so good. If you read the book, it makes a lot of sense.
I feel like it's that thing where, like, when you ask like a politician who his favorite women are, and he's like, "I love women. My mom, my girlfriend,
my mom's a woman.
Daughter, my daughter's a woman." But so I feel like I don't want to come off like that. But no, that's kind of obvious because she was such a huge supporter of my creativity.
Yeah.
And I often feel like I'm living out her dreams in multiple ways. Just being alive and happy is like, I think one of them. Being able, unlike most parents who are like, "You'll go into arts over my dead body." She was always like, "You're an artist. You're going to do it. That's what you're going to do. We're going to, she just was with it from the beginning. Like she got it. And I think she got it because she was an artist and she couldn't actually manifest as an artist because of all of the circumstances of her life. And so I think she saw that I had that same thing and she was 100% for it. And people often would call her irresponsible for that, or they would sort of act like she's not really, that she, I say this in the book, but that, people like acted like, she wasn't serious enough. She was an unserious woman in the way people talked about her. But to my horror, I, took some of that as truth when I was growing up and was like, yeah, like, why don't we have any money? And like, how come you never, that kind of thing. But like, as I've grown older, and she could be like really annoying too. That just probably didn't help, but as I've grown older, I've come to just really look back and be like, oh my God, this woman like was ride or die for me. Like for my true self. Yeah. And I don't think I understood that at the time, that all any of us ever want, I believe, is to be seen authentically and loved at the same time, that I see the whole you and I love the whole you. And I now understand the tremendous extent to which she did that. And it just makes me feel, so grateful for her. And so I think she would be so happy. Yeah. She would be moved to tears to read this book. And she would just be so proud.
I'm like moved to tears listening to you talk about it. Okay. Well, on that beautiful, beautiful note, that's basically what the book is like, people. In case you couldn't tell, this whole conversation is just basically you hearing what the book is like without actually hearing any of the book or reading any of the book. Another Word for Love. It is out now as you're listening, wherever you got your books. Do you read the audiobook?
I do read the audiobook.
Okay. Carvell reads audiobook. I think I might have to reread it with the audio. But go get this book, guys. This is one of the books I love this year. This is a book that will be very high on my list. I'm about 50 books in this year, and it's definitely in that top echelon. It's just, if you love a memoir and you want to read a memoir that's doing things to the genre and doing things to the reader, like this is one of those. So thank you so much for being here, Carvell.
Thank you so much for being. This is so great. I loved it.
I'm so happy. And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Carvell Wallace for being my guest. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Stephen Weil for helping to make this conversation possible. Remember, the Stacks Book Club pick for May is No Name in the Street by James Baldwin. We will be discussing that book on Wednesday, May 29th with Yadon Israel. If you love this show and you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack. And check out my Substack, tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. And you can check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Lauren Tyree. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.